In this 7v7 boxing match, attacks came one after the next, all race long.
Seriously.
Welcome to the 2019 Henleyville Road Race. Today we will be discussing the team tactics used and how the field responded, the road conditions, staying safe in the field, and nutrition. So here we are joining the race on the last lap. There are 7 members of the Revs Road Race cycling team. One of them is currently off the front, and the field is trying to chase back. As you just saw, they've been on the attack the entire race. The Henleyville Road Race is essentially a large rectangle. There is one small hill, more like a bump on the course. We do 3 laps. Each lap is 22 miles. There is a neutral feed section, and on the last lap you turn left and head down towards the bottom, and that's where the finish for the sprint is. The road conditions are not fantastic. There's lots of bad pavement in different areas. Overall, in general, it feels like the surface is so rough that you don't free roll very well, so it feels like you're always working harder than you should be when you're drafting. So prior to the race, I had developed a plan for myself. That plan was based on a little bit of research I had done. Seeing that 7 people from Revs Road Race was going to be there, kind of figured they'd have some sort of tactics of attacking or trying to get into a breakaway. And that's always a little scary because even 7 reasonably strong guys working together could make your life very hard. I had done a little research on some of the riders, but there wasn't a ton to know. Several of the riders I had raced with before and been in a breakaway with, so I knew there was some guys here that were capable of that, and I was concerned about a mixture of a couple of Revs guys and a couple of the stronger guys getting together. So I really need to be heads up and pay attention, but I also needed to try to manage my effort because closing down these gaps, it takes a lot out after almost 60 miles in a road race. And as you can see here, there were several individual efforts, and us non-Revs Road Race guys never rotated together. And I think this is a problem I've seen in some of the lower end races that I do. On the race rides, if someone breaks away or a couple guys do, it's kind of powerful to have 30, 40 guys rotating. And usually it's only 20 or 30 of those rotating, but they can hold a much higher pace. But these individual attacks and hard pulls takes it out of everybody, and everybody's got to make up this gap and burn a match on their own. And it would have been much better, in my opinion, had we organized and tried to rotate, and we each pull at a pace that's a little higher than the group in front of us, and we just do a constant rotation to bring them back. But that never really happened. In fact, later in the race, I tried talking to a couple of guys, and I pointed out to them what was going on, that we needed to work together, but it never seemed to work out. So it was really smart of Revs to take advantage of their 7 guys, and one of their guys is burning a match, and every one of us in the rest of the field is burning a match because nobody worked together. In fact, what you're going to see is a non-Revs guy is going to take a little attack off the front. And while someone from Revs does cover it, again, the rest of us are going to end up burning a match trying to catch this guy. And it's not the strongest attack ever, but every little effort counts. And here I am going to have to drop up to 600-something watts to pull these guys back for a minute. And it's just another little dig. Honestly, I wasn't feeling that great. I'm not sure if I had a lack of sleep or maybe my nutrition was off, but all morning I kind of felt a little bit underneath where I wanted to be. And what you're going to see here is all these little attacks added up. It's never the average speed. It's always all these little surges, all these little efforts constantly up and down and up and down. And after 3 hours or so, this really begins to take an effect. As you can hear, there is a lot of gravel on this course in different places, and it was kicking up all the time. You know, there were certainly large sections without it, but there was a lot of just sections where it was more dense, and then, you know, some amount seemed present almost all the time. These little gaps like this one here, I was trying to remember something a friend of mine said. Dan, I have a bad habit of jumping onto attacks and surging with them and putting out bigger numbers than I should. And so in a lot of cases, I'm trying to save, and I'm trying to, you know, keep my best card strong, which is a sprint at the end. And so in this case, I'm really waiting for someone else to come do some work and hoping, but I'm also looking ahead here and thinking, you know, how far ahead do I want to get this to go? How strong are these guys, and can they hold it? You know, at this point, we're probably 35, 40 minutes, maybe just a little over to the finish. And so I'm always thankful when a couple of guys like this come around and so I can pull. And both these two gentlemen in front of me were in a breakaway with me at Copper Valley. And so I'm thankful that they're doing it. I'm thankful he just pointed out that bump back there, that little pothole. And, you know, it's one of those little tactics. And, you know, being newer to racing, I'm trying to get better at managing my efforts and looking for these things, but you know, I also don't want to get dropped, and I've seen breakaways go, so it's a hard balance. Speaking of balances, I took a water bottle every lap, and I really didn't have much water left at the end. I probably had about a quarter of a water bottle, and balancing your nutrition is super important. I had in my pockets in the back, I had 2 walnut chocolate chip brownies, which were absolutely amazing to eat. Although the way my wife had wrapped them, it was a little hard to unwrap while we were riding. It was a great wrapping for if you wanted to keep them protected, but it was a little bit more difficult than I would have liked opening. I want to be able to open it quick, eat it, and as much as it tastes good and I want to enjoy it, the focus is really just to get it in my body. So have to work on that a little bit. I had a Skratch Labs, I think I had Fruit Punch, which is a newer flavor that I'm really liking, in my bottle. I only had one of those. And I had another regular bottle of water. And again, with 3 laps, I had 3 more of those. So in total, I think I had 5 bottles of hydration. I had a chocolate waffle, which I don't think I ate. I had some Skratch Labs drops, the raspberry ones, which the new ones with the like crystallized sugar on the outside are just absolutely amazing. I know I was eating those probably every 15 to 20 minutes. I'd have 1 or 2 of those, just a little bit, maybe every half hour. And in the last closing probably 10 miles or less, probably about 8 miles, I think, if I remember correctly, I had a chocolate goo gel, which has a little bit of caffeine. That caffeine or the sugar contents or whatever's in that gel is like nitroglycerin to me. And even though it's been a longer race, I feel like when I have those right before a sprint, I feel like I have the proper amount of energy that I need to put out the kind of power that it takes to do a sprint. So hydration-wise, I felt pretty good. Nutrition-wise, for the food, I felt really good. And you know, in a longer road race like this, that's, you know, pushing into 3 hours, that's really critical. Right here, I take a moment to try to get these guys to work with me. So I tried pointing out what I thought was happening in terms of Rev's tactics. But they were trying to pull us out one at a time, and it would be better if we rotated together. They never really responded, and we never really seemed to work together that great, as I mentioned before. But I wanted to at least give it a shot. I mean, you never know. anything to save a little energy. And you know, I guess in my mind I was expecting the attacks to come a little harder and a little more frequently on this last lap. And as you can see here up on the left, 2 guys from Revs are attacking off the front. There's a little bit of a downhill here, and as you can see, I'm not putting out a ton of power. In fact, I didn't go sit on, well, I guess I'm putting out more power here, but I didn't go sitting on the top tube. I did get into as low of a tuck as possible, and I wanted to use as little energy, if any at all, to just keep my speed up and kind of roll with the group. As you can see there, a gentleman on my left kind of slid over. You got to watch for lateral movement at all times and be careful. But this guy, gentleman sliding forward, people are going to try to draw that back. And again, it's one more effort that adds to the pile that, you know, can take it out at the end. But this particular attack didn't stay very strong and didn't last very long. This attack here concerned me because the gentleman going off the front is very strong, and the gentleman in red, Shiva, who was going with him, was very strong, and the third person who went was also in a previous breakaway that succeeded with me, so I was not going to let this breakaway go. But as the gentleman here in the blue was going side by side with me, and I was putting out 700 watts, he started pulling up, and so I backed off and let him take the charge, and I just follow him up to this group. Again, just trying to save a little bit of effort. I've had this happen a couple of times where 2 of us are, you know, up off the saddle or trying to pull hard to pull something back, and if I know that I could hesitate a second and let them go forward and I get behind and I save that much more, well, it's worth the risk of having to do just a little bit extra work in case they fade or stop. But anyhow, this group I was not going to let go, especially with these 4 people in the front. I just considered it way too big of a threat, and I was going to do everything possible. But again, this little surge wasn't very hard or very long, but just another little straw on the camel's back. On this attack, Rev has put in a pretty big dig with this gentleman who I felt like was pretty strong, and I respected. But these 2 gentlemen in front of me I knew were also very strong, and I felt like if push came to shove, we could pull this guy back if we really started working together and needed to. So I was comfortable sitting here watching this gentleman go farther down the road. As you can see in the bottom right hand corner here, we are getting more than halfway done with this last lap, so time is ticking down, and the number of people who can sustain an effort from this point to the finish is unknown, but the closer we get to the finish, in my mind, the more probability an attack like this has. So moving forward, everyone's kind of looking around each other, seeing who's going to close this gap down. And this gentleman up here in the blue jersey with the white helmet looks around, and I guess he decides he's going to take this on for himself, and decides to pull back, or try to pull back this breakaway. Of course, everyone accelerates with him, and I'm just trying to save a little energy, but I again wish this was a rotation, smooth pulls, and nice teamwork as opposed to a hard surge. You know, I have a coach, and we do a lot of training that I think prepares me for, you know, surges and things like this. And, you know, right now I can just sit at a sort of even pace back here and take a free ride, but I think it'd be even easier if we didn't hold quite such a high speed and if we were to, again, just rotate and go easy. But racing isn't in a perfect world, and you have to be able to deal with the situations as they are. Another downside to these hard surges is if you're the one doing it, you got to maintain it. And as we see here, that's not happening. So we get one hard surge and then another hard surge, and so I got to put down even more power to come back up to this gentleman who, at this late stage in the race, I definitely have concerns for going off on his own. And again, it's, you know, it's racing, it is what it is. It's just a lot easier if people work together to pull back a group. And I think in higher level races maybe that happens more, but This is a 4-5 race, and so you have different experience levels. I get a lot of experience from doing the race rides I do, and that helps me out a lot. Ultimately, we do bring this gentleman back, but as is very predictable, Revs does a counterattack, and as you can see, the gentleman in front of me is not very pleased, shaking his head no. And you know, it's smart tactics. Again, you've got several people that are not on a team. You have 7 guys that are on a team, and you know, they want to draw us out to burn matches. And with us not working together, well, again, they were doing a good job of it. And here we have one gentleman again taking the lead at the front, trying to pull this Revs guy back, and ultimately he decides to take a little time off the front, and at least someone else picks up that pace, and I'm again just going to follow wheels. Again, there's still no rotation. It's a lot of individual efforts to pull it back, which, you know, against one individual's maybe a little easier. If Revs had 2 or 3 guys up the road at one time, it'd probably be a lot harder. But you know, even this level of an attack or attack pulling back needs a little help, and so at least another gentleman comes up, and you know, there begins to be a little bit of coordination in some way. Again, we're very down to the last few miles, and so I'm going to do absolutely as little as possible, but I would participate. If we were rotating smooth and working together, I would happily participate to bring this back or help manage any people that try to get off the front. At this point in the race, things really mellow out, and there are no more attacks. As you can see here, we are just really going easy until Revs lines up for the finish. This part of the course had a little bit more rocky stuff, and I was pretty happy we went mellow through this last corner, because I didn't want to have to take any risks, and I don't know, I'd already had a few corners where I could feel my rear wheel slipping out. At this point, we're probably 400-500 meters to the finish, and I want to make sure I move up to a point where if someone goes off the front, I can close it easy enough. I do expect some people to come around from behind, but I'm trying to save enough energy here that I can cover that, and I'm letting Shiva here try to close this gap for me, because I don't want to do any more work than I have to right here. I know that Chris on my right is very strong and near me, so if somebody does come flying around, I feel there's a couple of guys that would take up that challenge, and I could, you know, save some energy by following them. Right here, we're getting a little bit bunched up, a little more than I'd like to be. You know, 3, almost 4 wide here, basically. It's going to be hard for me to respond to something if it happens on the right-hand side quickly. So I take the advantage of moving up, and as you can see, the guy from Revs comes up on the left-hand side, maybe about 300 meters to go, and everyone's going to respond to this, including Revs themselves. And so again, I'm trying to have some patience and wait, because as you can see, there's the 200-meter sign. This is an uphill finish. We don't get to see it, and I don't exactly know where the finish is. So I launched my sprint at an approximation, and fortunately I'm able to come around everyone here with enough power that I can take the win, and all the energy I've saved has helped contribute to this. I hope this video was useful, and I look forward to you subscribing and tuning in to the future. Over the winter, we're going to have some reviews and a couple other different things that are off the bike. But until next time,